Hi, my name is Adam Walls, and I'm an award-winning makeup artist. You may have seen my work in USA's The Purge. Are you curious about how foam latex prosthetics are made and applied? Well, come with me today as we visit our friends at Morphstore and we figure out that process. Welcome back to part 2 of our foam latex series. Now in part 1 we visited Morphstore, where we basically got to mix and bake our foam latex prosthetics. We got to demold them later and basically see how these cool pieces all kind of come together. In this video though, we're bringing it all to life. Now we'll be going through the design process for our character on Procreate for the iPad, but also while we're there, we're going to design some stencils which we're going to use later during the application process. Once that's set, we're going to pre-paint our foam latex prosthetics, we're going to wrap our model's hair, and we're going to apply a bald cap in this episode. Then we'll move into the full prosthetic application, we'll paint up the prosthetics, and then you get to see the final transformation. Now my friend Laura so graciously sat down to be our victim today, and she's honestly the perfect victim because she's got really long hair. Now since our character has no hair, and Laura has a lot of hair, this is going to make our process a little bit more interesting today. Essentially, we've got to get all of that hair up under a wig cap, under that bald cap. And when you're wrapping that hair, you've got to be really careful about trying to follow the shape of the actor's head. You want to make sure that hair looks natural up underneath that cap. So most of the time, the hair department takes care of the hair wrap for us. I know here in the States, that's generally speaking how it works, but I know in other countries, that's not always the case. A lot of times, artists do both hair and makeup. So a lot of times this hair wrapping process will fall to the individual effects artist or the makeup artist. Now this is a challenging skill to master, and I don't normally do this, but I'm going to give it a shot today. We're going to give it the old college try. So for all my hair friends out there, don't judge me too harshly. So all of that being said, if you haven't seen part 1 yet, I'd go ahead and recommend checking that one out so you can see the process that Morphstore goes through in putting these prosthetics together. In the meantime though, for everybody else who has seen that and wants to jump into part 2, let's get this process going. So like we were saying earlier, Laura is not bald. Laura has a lot of hair. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take an image that she sent me, and I'm going to go ahead and basically erase her hair. I found a generic image online of somebody who had a bald head. So basically I took that head and I photoshopped it onto hers. Now you can see that I'm actually taking the prosthetics that Andy had sent, and we're taking the horns and the facial piece and we're kind of putting it into place where we would like it to be. After all those different elements have the same base color, then I start going in and painting over top. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and put a white spatter pass over everything. Now these 3 images that just popped up on the screen are my references. The very one on the top with the blue and the red, I get it, it's an AI image, you can tell, but I liked the shininess of it. I like the blue and the red and the contrast between those colors. I like the pattern that the wild cat has, and I really like that white base layer contrasted with that bright blue that that lizard has down on the bottom. I find that using real life reference to motivate what you do in your design and your makeup is a fantastic way to go. If you're going to put something on the screen, or if you're going to put something on a makeup, make sure it's motivated by something. And if you can pull from a real world reference, that's the best way to go. Now in this case, you can see that I'm starting to work with my shading a little bit. When you're doing a design like this, in order to make it look realistic, it's all about the shading. It's all about your highlights and your shadows. The more of those highlights and shadows you add into your design, the more it's going to pop off the page. So you can see I'm going in and I'm working on all those shadows by the horns. I'm working on the highlights on the horn. Now you can see I've gone and I've contoured her a lot as well. We want to make sure that her face has got some definition, so that way it pops a little bit once we put it on camera. Now we're going to start working on the stencil, and you can see that I've taken part of the design from her forehead and I've dropped it back into a different document in Procreate. And essentially I'm just repeating that over and over again. I'm duplicating my layers and flipping them, and then this is going to work to give us a stencil. So when we actually apply it on the day, those lines going up along the forehead, we can make sure that that's exactly the way we want it. So that's where our Cricut, or Cricut, or however you say it, how that comes in handy. So you can see I've taken my design, I've dropped it into the design program, and I just start printing it out on the Cricut machine. This is a great technique to use, especially if you're trying to save time and not have your actor or actress sit in the makeup chair for any longer than they need to be. If you have to paint in every single one of those lines, you're going to be there forever. Now, if it's a one-off and you don't care about the time, fine, go for it, you can knock it out. Here's also something else to think about. If you had to do this makeup on your actor or actress on multiple days and you have to have it match every single day, I would really suggest having something like this ready to go in place so that way you can replicate your makeup easily and efficiently and correctly every single day. So when you're dealing with foam latex, you're going to want to pre-paint your pieces first. And we're going to pre-paint our pieces with a paint called Pax. Now, Pax is essentially Procreate and an acrylic paint mixed together. So you can make it on your own, or you can buy some from the store. In this case, because I wanted that kind of sheen that we were talking about, I'm using a metallic white paint, and I'm using the Procreate, and I'm just going through and I'm coating my pieces. You want to make sure you do this because it'll give you a nice even surface to paint on later. But here's the thing about this stuff. Because it is a glue, it is a little bit sticky. And remember, we've got those paper thin edges on the edges of those horns and on the facial prosthetic. So really take care to not run your paints over those really fine edges. You can easily take one of those edges and fold them over, and it's going to create a nightmare later, and then you're going to be dealing with a really thick edge. Just avoid that and just keep the paint on the center parts of the prosthetic, and you can always paint that out after you get it glued onto your actor or actress. All right, so here's Laura, and as I was saying before, she has a lot of hair. But before we deal with the hair, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and clean her skin. I'm using Kiehl's Glue Astringent, and I'm just kind of going over all the surfaces that we're going to glue, and I'm making sure that we clean any oils or dirt or debris off the skin. Now, the next thing you see I'm doing is I'm going ahead and taking her hair, and I'm splitting it off into 4 different sections. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that each one of those sections I can manipulate individually, and I can wrap it around her head. And that's what we're trying to do. I'm essentially trying to mimic the head shape with hair. So what I'm essentially trying to do is I'm trying to put the hair back here to kind of create that curve going backwards. And in order to do that, I'm going ahead and placing some pins in the hair to go ahead and kind of pin things in place. And then of course we're finishing off with a wig cap. I'm getting a little help from her to kind of get that in place. And just looking at it, for the most part, it looks okay. It's still a little lumpy in a section or two, but I think for what we're going for today, I think it's going to work. So what we do is we pin that in place, and I'm using a little bit of opsite tape just to kind of seal everything in. I'm trying to make sure I have a nice smooth transition from her skin to that cap. And you can see I'm putting that opsite tape all the way around her head, and I'm covering up any loose hairs that might be sticking out. Now, the back of the neck is an area of concern always when you're doing a bald cap, so you really want to make sure you have all of that hair covered. Now, you can see in this case we're using a latex bald cap. I'm not using a vinyl one today, and the reason being is the nice thing about the latex cap is it's a little bit thicker. So if I do have any strange lines or anything else that's underneath, the vinyl, if I use that cap, basically those lines will show through. The nice thing about a latex bald cap is it's a little bit more forgiving. So if you do get any sort of weird lines or anything else, it's a little less noticeable in a rubber bald cap as opposed to the vinyl one. Now, the downside that you're going to run into with a latex cap as opposed to a vinyl one is you can't really dissolve these edges. Those edges are going to be there, so you have to do something to take care of them. Now, I know in our case, that foam latex prosthetic is going to come up over her eyebrows. It's going to delineate here along the forehead, so I don't have to worry about a line there because the prosthetic is going to cover it. Same thing with the ears. I know we're going to be covering those ears with horns, so in that case, those horns are going to cover that edge. And that whole section of hair kind of along the neck and back by the nape of the neck. Luckily, I have a foam latex occipital piece that we're going to put there, and that's going to cover our seam or any sort of strangeness that we're going to get back there. Nothing kills the illusion of a bald cap like wrinkles back here on the back of the neck. So the best way to do it is to make sure that your actor or actress is always putting tension back there. So when I have her lift her head up like this, and I glue right here, the moment she puts her head down, this is all stretched out, and you should have a nice clean surface back there to work with. Again, if we have any sort of issues, not a big deal for this one because we are going to put an occipital piece back there which will cover all of that anyway. But it's a really good habit to get into whenever you're doing a bald cap, is to make sure that this is as nice and clean as you can possibly get it. And after I get the back of the neck done, the next thing we do is we take care of the ears. So I usually like to kind of glue up the back of the neck, just under the ear, and in the front, I get the front glued down just to the ear. So then that way, if it is a realistic bald cap where the ears are supposed to pop out, I can go ahead and cut just slightly on the inside of the ear and then pull the ear out of the cap so it's exposed. But in this case, because we are covering up the horns, I'm keeping her ears for the most part on the inside of the cap. So all I'm doing is running a strip of glue up on the inside and tacking it into place. And once everything's dried and ready to go, kind of push it down, hit a couple of those spots that look a little funky, and then we're ready to move on to our next step. So for our next step, we're going to go ahead and put the occipital piece down. Now you can see that I've gone ahead and glued the back of the neck, and I've put a little bit of glue on that piece too. I get a strip there in the center, make sure it's lined up right where I want it, and then I slowly start going through and I start hitting all those edges. I really want to make sure that all of those edges have got a double bond on it. Now, when you're doing this with foam latex, it's really, really important. Don't go all the way to the edge. Those edges on these pieces are paper thin, and those paper thin edges are what you want in order to get these dissolved down into the skin. Now, I'll get a little onto that in a minute, but just so you know, if you do get a little too close to that edge and it folds over, or it, like, gravity takes it and it sticks to itself, now you've got a thick edge that you're going to have to deal with, and that's always a pain in the butt. So try to avoid that if you can. Get it glued down where you can. Try to very easily get your brush under there and get that edge to lay down nice and flat. Now for the next step, we're going to go ahead and glue her eyebrows down. Now I'm sure you've seen your fair share of online videos where folks will use glue sticks to glue their eyebrows down. Essentially, we're doing the same thing. I'm going to use Telesis though. We'll get those eyebrows nice and flat as we can, and then I'll go over and powder them afterwards. So then I'll get my prosthetic out and I'll line it up. Now this is a generically sculpted piece, so it will roughly fit on the person's face, but of course everybody's face is different. So take a little bit of time, and especially if you're going to put a face piece on with nose, make sure the nose lines up where that needs to. Make sure the nostrils line up. You want to make sure your actor can breathe. It's kind of important. And after you get all that done, what I like to do is I like to get a strip down the center of the nose, right up into here. That way I can continue to manipulate the side pieces, and I can kind of glue down here so I'm not invading her eye well. Obviously, this piece is going to get right up into the eyes, right on either side, so I want to make sure I'm not dissolving an edge into her eye well any more than I need to be. So I like to try to kind of push and move that piece up a little bit as you go along. And that's the advantage that you're going to run into with foam latex as opposed to something like silicone. Silicone doesn't really have that stretch like foam latex does. Foam latex is a lot more forgiving, especially for being a generic piece. So you have the freedom and the flexibility to move that piece around a little bit. Now earlier I was being really careful about my edges, and this is why. You can see that I've actually taken a little bit of spirit gum and I've mixed some 99% alcohol in with it. It's about a 50-50 mix. And essentially what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to dissolve our edges a little bit and kind of work them into the skin. Now with foam latex, you're not really dissolving an edge, but you can see here how it kind of takes the sting off of it a little bit. That mixture allows you to stretch that paper thin edge out just enough, and it allows you to kind of stick it down into the skin. And in some cases, you can see here on the occipital piece along the back that I'm actually getting some of that to come off, and it does kind of blend off just a little bit like a really paper thin edge on a silicone prosthetic. This is really, really helpful, especially if you're dealing with any edges that need to totally vanish. If you're not going to cover it up with color, or if you're not going to color it up with Procreate cream, really get in there with that alcohol and spirit gum mix to really get things blended off the way you'd like to. Now, of course, just like a silicone prosthetic, I'm going through with my Procreate cream and I'm kind of hitting all my edges, just making sure everything's down as much as I can get it. Now we're moving on to the horns. And again, we're trying to follow that design that I kind of set. That's half the reason why we did the design. I wanted to make sure I knew where everything was going to go before I got here on the day. It's nothing worse than having to sit there with an actor in your chair and go, well, I don't know, let's stick this thing here. Doesn't always work out great that way, and your makeup takes so much longer when you're having to answer those questions on the day. So at this point, I'm just going through horn by horn and making sure everything is going where I need it to go. Now, I did have a little bit of an issue on that back occipital piece, so I figured that was a good place for a horn. If you do have a little edge, or if you have something you want to cover up, this is a great way to do it, especially if you have another prosthetic to put on. Use the prosthetic to cover an issue. That's a really good way to go. After I get everything down to where I want it, you can see that I'm working with my spirit gum and alcohol mixture, and I'm hitting all those little edges. I did have 2 little edges in the front on those horns that are causing an issue, so I did have 2 little blenders on hand. Again, have a blender on hand. It's a great way to fix a problem if you run into it. So we went ahead and just kind of covered a couple little spots just to make sure we were okay. And now I'm going back in with my Procreate cream, and I'm covering all those edges all around the makeup just to make sure everything is down and flat and exactly where we want it. Now the ears are going to be a little funny. Because I didn't have ear prosthetics, I decided to use those horns as my ears, which is why we kept them under the cap. So there's a lot of finagling with those foam latex pieces back there. But again, that's the advantage of foam latex, is they can bend, they can move, you can stretch them, and you can get them into place, which is great. Now the color that I'm going over the top is that same PAX color that I painted all the prosthetics with beforehand. I'm using that to cover the bald cap that we have on her and kind of any of those areas on the skin. I want to make sure that texture is consistent across your pieces and on the skin, making sure that everything's going to work out all right. Now because PAX is a glue mixed with an acrylic, I don't like going in around the eyes, which is why those eyes are still kind of open and skin colored. So today what I'm going to use is I'm going to use Aquacolor. Aquacolor is a Krylon product, and it's a pigment that can be blended with water. So it's really easy to go on. Generally speaking, it spreads well. Make sure it dries. I think I got a little spot on one of the sides of her eyes where it didn't really dry all the way, and you can kind of see her skin a little bit through it. But I didn't sweat it because I knew we were going to be going over with some other additional colors and eyeshadow and everything else. Also, ears. Make sure to get in those ear canals. Nothing ruins the illusion of a makeup when you take a look at the side of a creature's ear and you're like, wait a minute, that's skin colored. It's one of those spots that you can easily forget when you're doing a makeup on set, until you get to set and the camera catches the ear and you're going, oh God, and you've got to run in real quick to cover that little spot. Don't make that mistake. Cover that while you have an opportunity to. After I get all that base layer on, we're going to go ahead and start adding additional colors with the airbrush. I think I went in with a white first, and now I'm bringing in a slight yellow hue into it as well. I want everything just to kind of blend off, and I wanted to kind of warm it up a little bit. White is a really interesting color, especially when you put it on camera and you put it in front of a light, because everything becomes really flat. You lose any dimension that an actor has in their face. So essentially what you're going to see me do over the next few minutes is kind of fight that a little bit. I'm trying to do anything I can to kind of add some breakup to take away from that really stark white. Now, the nice thing about it is white is oftentimes a base color for all your other colors. So adding on top of that, you can layer really easily and you can push certain areas darker easily. Now, those stencils that we made earlier, again, becoming a lifesaver right here. I'm adding those blue colors just like we had in our design, and I'm lining that stencil up right where I want it to kind of add that pattern in and around her head. So you'll notice that those lines that I'm adding, all of the patterns that we're kind of adding in there with our stencil, it's not exactly symmetric, and that's totally intentional. So when you look at anybody's face, shoot, look at my face right now, it is not exactly symmetrical. You could go, oh, you got 2 eyes and they're here and here. You get 2 eyebrows here and here. But when you really look at it, if you really look at my face, my eyes are at slightly different levels. My eyebrows are at slightly different levels. They're not totally even. We're not machines. We're not built that way. We're not made that way. And so your creature that you're going to put on screen shouldn't be that way either. Should it be roughly symmetrical? Sure, absolutely. You're going to have an ear here and an ear here. Your ears better be there. Now, if they're slightly like this, great. That's the way things look like naturally in the real world. Now, if you've got one ear up here and one ear down here, now you're making a bold choice, and I would avoid making that choice because it's going to be distracting and all of a sudden you've taken it too far. But if these lines are a little bit off, or if the patterns are a little bit off, that's totally fine. Again, you're going for realism. You're trying to look at things in the real world and bring them into a fantastical design. Obviously, she doesn't exist in the real world, but we wanted her to make her feel like she could if she did. So that's part of the job as the makeup artist. And you do that by making things not quite symmetrical, or you take some of those spatter patterns that we're going to use to kind of break up skin color in different places. That also helps with that. So keep those things in mind as you're doing your makeup. Now you can see that I'm still kind of going through and I'm kind of doing all of my finishing. I'm going through and I'm trying to highlight the horns. I hit them with a little bit of red, but they weren't really popping as much as I needed them to. So I was bringing a couple little lines in there. And then you can see that I'm also kind of fighting with, again, that white. You know, we were talking about it earlier, but because that white is so stark, we lose a lot of her features. So I'm actually going in with a black in my airbrush, and I'm trying to do my best to contour her a little bit. I'm giving her some darkness in along her cheekbones. I'm trying to go ahead and highlight those horns by kind of making where the horns attach to the face. I'm trying to make those darker. I'm trying to bring in some darkness around the eyes. I'm trying to really extend her face outwards. I want to make sure that her features pop. Now, I could sit and finesse this for another hour, but I don't have another hour. So a lot of times what you're trying to do as a makeup artist is you're trying to get the most bang for your buck. Now, the fun part about this process is I'm going through, you'll notice that Laura's taking some time to look at herself in the mirror. She's taking a second or two to see how her head is moving, to see what her eyes are doing in the shot. And that's really fun as a makeup artist to see when your actor or your model starts doing that. That's when they start feeling what they have on their face. That's when they start playing with the character a little bit. And you'll notice as I go on, she's going to continue to do this a little bit. Laura is looking to become an actor. She's right out of high school. She's in college now. She's looking at those opportunities for her in the future. And I love to see when actors start to feel what I have put on them, because it is a collaborative process. Yes, I can make somebody look a certain way, but you have to live that part if you're in that part. You have to become that character. And I love it when I can see actors start to feel it at that point. And that really tells you how much of a collaborative process this really is. So at this point, we put a sealer over everything, make sure everything is locked in. And you can see that I'm adding a little bit of gloss on a sponge to all the horns. I really wanted to give just a little bit of a shine to the tip of those horns. I thought it would be a nice touch. And at this point, we're pretty much done. So you can kind of see that everything that we kind of wanted to put in there, we did. I could have spent some more time to really kind of punch that definition. If I had to do this makeup again, I might add some more skin breakup. I didn't add as much of that as I wanted to. But again, it's one of those things that you learn something from every makeup you do. If there was something that wasn't working for you in this makeup, or you get it on camera and you're like, oh man, I wish I would have done this, file that away in the back of your head. The more of these you do, and the more time you can be not critical to be self-doubting, but really be critical in your makeups. Take a look at them, go, oh man, I wish I could have done this, this, and this better. Because when you start analyzing those things are going to be in your head the next time you do a makeup. And the more of these you do, and the more time you spend kind of looking at your work and making sure that you're kind of up to where you need to be, you can address these things. And those things will get better as time goes along. I was actually flipping through my phone the other day and I found some old makeups from way back in the day that my daughter was looking at. And I was just like, oh man, I was still learning a lot at that point. But again, that's the thing. The more you do it, the better you get. The more of these little tricks that you get under your sleeve, and it can really help your makeup at the end of the day. Do you want to do this in fun part?
What? Are you just gonna rip it out of my head?
Well, you can.
Can I cut my face open?
You ready for it?
I'm sorry.
This is where it gets fun. So, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna do a little notch. I'm gonna do a little hole up here, and I'm just gonna let you dig in there. I'm gonna let you pull it back, but I'm gonna do that, and I'll let you do that. And then when you get to that point, I'm gonna rip it. Ready?
Yeah. Just
There. So, if you look up, like pull it up and back, pull it up.
facelift.
Right?
Wait.
And as I always say, if you're not smiling or laughing while doing this, we're not doing it right. So as you can see, we're going to get into the removal. After kind of getting the top of it open, you'll notice all that'll come right off of the wig cap because we didn't glue any of that to the cap. And then I just start working down. The nice thing about when you have a bald cap on somebody, once you open it up on the top, you now have access to get to where the prosthetic meets the skin, and it's a lot easier to take it off when you're working from the inside. Again, in this case, I'm using isopropyl Mirrostate mixed with just a little bit of 99% in there as well. I'm kind of getting in there just to kind of break everything down and slowly working to remove all this from her skin. This is one of those processes that I like to take my time with. You don't want to rush it. You know, if you're going to pull anything off of the actor's skin, that can create problems. You don't want to hurt your actor, number one, most importantly. But number two, if you do have to glue this on day in and day out, you want the best surface to glue to. So if you're going to start disrupting the skin, hurting the skin while you're doing this, not only are you hurting your actor or actress, you're kind of boning yourself for the next couple days. So really take care to make sure that the skin is fine. You can see I'm going in with that puff, and I'm kind of hitting a couple spots, and then I'm moving on. When you look at those spots, it's like, wait, you didn't remove anything. No, you're right. I didn't remove anything. But that Mirrostate is slowly working on that there, and I also noticed that the skin was starting to get a little bit red. So let it rest, move on to another spot, hit that spot, let that skin rest, and then, you know, work your way back around to it. I always find that's a really good way to go, just to make sure that you're not putting your actor through any undue stress. And then if you get to a point, you know, go ahead and get a wet, warm towel and go ahead and use that. A lot of times that heat and that moisture, once you put it on the skin, really helps to break things down on the underside. So use that to your advantage. If you have a sticky spot that's giving you trouble, go ahead and put that towel on there, let it rest. Try to wipe it off of that towel and then go back in with your sponge later. And that's about it. Once we get all that off, go ahead and bring the hair down, and essentially she's good to go. All right, so there you have it. That's the foam latex process in a nutshell. Again, I just want to say a special thanks to Morphstore, who let us invade their shop a couple weeks ago while we get to see that whole process of putting those pieces together. Of course, today, the pieces that I put on, those were all Morphstore prosthetics. You can check out their website at morphstore.com. They've got a little bit of everything on there. So definitely check them out if you're looking to try to do a makeup like this on your own. And in the meantime, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Are you curious about doing a makeup like this? Do you want to give one a shot? Definitely let me know in the comments down below. And of course, if you like the video, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to the channel so you can keep updated on things as they drop. And in the meantime, as I always say, keep making cool stuff.